Hello and welcome back. Today, we are diving into one of the most brutal and complex conflicts of the late 20th and early 21st centuries, the Second Chechen War, which raged from 1999 to 2009. This war between Russian forces and Chechen separatists would leave deep scars, change the political landscape of Russia, and influence geopolitics for years to come. But how did this conflict, rooted in Chechny's desire for independence, unfold? Let's explore the deep history of the Second Chechen War. The roots of the Second Chechen War lie in the chaos of the 1990s, after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Chechnya, a small republic in the North Caucasus, declared independence in 1991 under the leadership of Dzhokhar Dudayev, a former Soviet Air Force general. Moscow, fearing the breakup of its territorial integrity, did not recognize Chechnya's independence. This led to the First Chechen War, a bloody and unsuccessful conflict from 1994 to 1996. After intense fighting, the war ended in 1996 with a peace agreement, and Chechnya was left de facto independent, although Moscow never formally recognized it. Chechnya's independence, however, came at a heavy cost. The war had decimated the republic, with tens of thousands of deaths and widespread destruction, particularly in Grozny. The fragile peace that followed was marked by lawlessness, the rise of militant groups, and the emergence of warlords. In the years following the First Chechen War, Chechnya descended into instability. During this period, a significant shift occurred within the Chechen separatist movement. While the original independence movement was primarily secular, by the late 1990s, a new generation of militant leaders emerged, including Shamil Basayev and Kataib. These men were radical Islamists, seeking not only Chechen independence but also the establishment of an Islamic state across the North Caucasus region. In 1999, Basayev, along with his Chechen forces, launched an attack on the neighboring Russian Republic of Dagestan. This invasion, along with a series of deadly bombings in Russian cities, was blamed on Chechen militants by Moscow. The bombings, which killed over 300 people, were a turning point that would trigger the Second Chechen War. Vladimir Putin, appointed Prime Minister of Russia in August 1999 by President Boris Yeltsin, would soon become the central figure in the Second Chechen War. In the wake of the bombings, and with growing public outrage, Putin took a hardline stance against Chechen separatists. He promised to wipe out terrorism and restore order in Chechnya. By the fall of 1999, Russian forces launched a full-scale invasion of Chechnya. The war would quickly evolve into a brutal and devastating conflict, one that would involve heavy artillery, airstrikes, and ground assaults. The Russian military aimed to crush the separatist movement once and for all and bring Chechnya back under Moscow's control. Grozny, the capital of Chechnya, became the epicenter of the war. The city, already devastated from the First Chechen War, was bombarded relentlessly by Russian forces. The Chechen separatists, under the leadership of Aslan Maskhadov, fought fiercely to defend their territory, using guerrilla tactics and blending into the civilian population. The battle for Grozny was one of the most intense urban conflicts of the late 20th century. Russian forces used overwhelming force, including artillery bombardments, airstrikes, and heavy tanks, to try to break the Chechen defenses. Thousands of civilians were caught in the crossfire, with reports of atrocities committed by both sides. Grozny was left in ruins, and by 2000, Russian forces had finally taken control, but the war was far from over. After Grozny's fall, the war transitioned into a full-scale insurgency. The Chechen rebels, now largely operating from mountainous regions and forests, continued to resist Russian control. Led by figures like Shamil Basayev, who was notorious for his brutal tactics, the insurgents used ambushes, suicide bombings, and hit-and-run strategies. They continued to target Russian military installations and civilians alike. Russian forces, while vastly superior in numbers and firepower, struggled to deal with the guerrilla tactics of the insurgents. The war had devolved into an ongoing, bloody stalemate. Despite Russian dominance on the battlefield, the Chechens maintained a stubborn resistance, using their knowledge of the terrain and their ability to blend in with the civilian population. The human cost of the Second Chechen War was immense. Thousands of civilians were killed, wounded, or displaced. The destruction of Chechny's infrastructure was catastrophic. Homes, schools, hospitals, and entire neighborhoods were wiped off the map. Chechens, caught between Russian bombardment and insurgent warfare, suffered greatly. International human rights organizations condemned both sides for committing atrocities. While Russian forces were accused of targeting civilians and using indiscriminate force, Chechen militants were also criticized for their brutal tactics, including kidnapping and executing Russian civilians. The war would leave deep scars on both the Russian and Chechen populations. The Second Chechen War officially ended in 2009, with the Russian government declaring victory. However, the insurgency did not entirely disappear. While Chechnya was brought back under Russian control, the legacy of the conflict would continue to shape both Russia and Chechnya for years. Putin's government used the war to consolidate power, while Chechnya was later governed by Ramzan Kadyrov, a former rebel turned ally of Moscow. Though Grozny has been rebuilt, the wounds of war are still felt. The Second Chechen War remains one of the darkest chapters in modern Russian history, a tragic and complex conflict that not only shaped the destiny of Chechnya but also of Russia itself.